Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking back at the year of 2023 and the amazing miniatures that I painted. Well, at least I think they're amazing. So I'm going to look back at the top 10 miniatures that I painted and why I chose these ones over all the rest that I painted. I mean, I'm sure I put up about 100 videos, if not more, in the past year. So let's get started with number 10. All right, so the very first one I picked, so my number 10, it's not because it's not one of my least favorites, it's not one at all, and of course there was many miniatures to look at, was Shoggoth from Cthulhu's Death May Die. Here he is right here in all his wonderful glory. There you go, you can see him right there. Well, you might not be able to see him very well, but he's there. The reason why I liked painting this miniature and why he's in my top 10 is because I use a different technique. Now, there's going to be links every time I show a new miniature to the video of the actual paint job I did on it. Because this one had a technique that started off with a black primer and then you used a whole bunch of, I think it was shades, or even, I think this one was contrast paints before I sold my contrast paints. And it darkened up the miniature but in the color you wanted. And then all I did was pretty much do dry brushing over areas to make them pop. And it was a very simple technique. I used a little bit of, I think this was a swamp color. I'm not sure if I used a swamp texture paint or whatever on this one, but I just liked the way it turned out. He's pretty gruesome looking. He's simple to paint. And this is the reason why he's number 10. But I mean, he could have been higher up too, but just there's some other miniatures I painted up this year that I simply like more. All right, let's move on to number 9. All right, so number 9 on this list, I don't actually have the miniature anymore. I sold it along with all my Conquest miniatures to be able to get into Star Wars Shatterpoint. But we're not going to talk about Shatterpoint right now. Anyways, so the number 9 is the Polemarch by by Parabellum Games. He's in the City States. And the reason why I like this miniature and why I thought he was in one of my top 10s is that I was starting to use the metallic paints and from the speed paint range, and I wanted to see how it covered and how well it did on Zenithal highlight, because I did a Zenithal highlight on this miniature. And I just found that the metallics popped. The blues that I used on them were really nice. It just had this, it was following the artwork really closely. Plus at the time, I was actually not into the City States Army that much. I was pretty much painting them just for the channel because actually Parabellum had sponsored the channel a bit and sent me some of these things for free. But I never had any bad thoughts against anything from Parabellum Games and the game itself. Just no one in my neighborhood was playing this anymore, and it died out pretty quickly. I know it's still a pretty big game in a lot of other countries around the world, but in the city where I'm from, it's just not popular, and I just had no more room for all these miniatures. So sadly enough, I'm not able to show you again the physical version of it, but the video will be popping up for you guys to watch. And another reason why I like painting this guy is because he had details, but not too many details. And I didn't want to do the grim dark version of the slap chop method on it. I really want to do a Zenithal highlight because I find that sometimes Zenithal highlight really gives your features that are seeing the light the most is what's going to pop out the most. All right, so let's move on now to number 8. All right, number 8, Spider-Man, regular version, not zombie mode, from Marvel Zombicide game. This was from the core box, and I'd gotten the core box way before a lot of people out there had, because my local game store actually had received it in a wave 1 shipping. So I painted up that box very quickly, and here is Spider-Man in all his glory here. I mean, I know he's out of focus there. Again, the link for the video will be up above. Now, the reason why I liked this miniature is because I primed them in black. And I primed him in black, and then I started painting him with just like some watered down paints, but with the colors that I really wanted. And I just found his suit came out looking almost identical to the movies. And I also used a gloss varnish on his spider web here, and just to make it pop a bit more. And it sometimes shows you when I paint a miniature, I often try to paint them fast as possible, but even starting off sometimes with a black primer can get a miniature painted really quickly because you're trying to go for a more darker version of a miniature. I mean, okay, it's a darker version, but he pops. Like he's got a lot of good details on him, and he pops. You can see the eyes, you can see the spider outfit, you can see every single nook and cranny of his spider outfit. Now, okay, he could have been a little higher up on my list, but there's some more that I just found that I had a better job with and I liked more. But however, this one did get a lot of likes and comments in my YouTube channel. Anyway, so if you haven't seen those videos, again, every time I show a miniature, the video is going to pop up as a link up above. You can go take a look. You can also just browse through all my miniatures and find it. But anyway, so this is my number 8. Let's move on to number 7. All right, moving on to number 7. This is one of the bigger miniatures I painted this year, and frankly, one of my favorite ways of testing blue speed paints. Because I had done a bunch, at this point I was doing a whole bunch of like testing speed paint colors like green, flesh, skeleton, and stuff like that. But it was harder to do specific colors, especially when it came to blue, because there's nothing that's all blue or something that you could use different blues on that would make it, you know, different. So this is where the Frozen Horror comes in from Hero Quest. This is the expansion of Frozen Horror expansion, but this is like the main boss here. And I ended up using pretty much, what, I think 5 or 6 blues. And I even used some air paint blues on the ice because I found that, I think this was Raging Sea or something like that underneath. And I thought it was going to become more of a light blue, like more like ice. And I hadn't gotten that texture paint from Green Stuff World that makes like the ice texture, which is something I might actually add eventually to this miniature. But I ended up using some air paints on top and just painting it very slowly, some highlights. I also did around the furs because I used some runic gray or something, a whole bunch of different colors here to do like what I wanted was like an ice effect on a miniature. Or a nice effect, get it? Just puns. So this is why this one came in at number 7. And he was actually one of my favorite miniatures, really. But there was some other ones that really just topped them a little bit more. There's another 6 more, in fact. And it was really hard to actually put these in order. So it's not necessarily how I love them or they turned out well and all that. It's not how many views they got and stuff like that. Because some of these barely got any view, or not as many views as I would have liked to, especially, you know, considering you're pretty much the only one out there painted right now that I've seen anyways. I don't know if other people have painted, but anyway, he was fun to paint. He was really cool. Tested the blues. People were asking for that, and I found I did a great job. And actually, I think this guy was actually base coated with the Instant Color Ice Charm Primer, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't actually white speed paint or a white primer to be able to use the speed paint on him. It was actually like a light blue, and it just made the blues pop even more. All right, so let's move on to number 6. All right, so number 6 is a bit different. It's not your typical from a board game or anything like that. It's actually from a company, Archon Studios, Dungeons and Lasers. And this one I did for Halloween this past year, and I thought it was going to be a spooky treat for everyone and everybody to enjoy. But it was kind of weird because I thought it was going to bring on a lot more views and that it was going to be using a technique of airbrushing with layering and a little bit of speed paints, a little bit of regular paint, some texture paint and stuff. And I really thought it was going to be a hit, but it wasn't too great. But the one it is the demonic tree from Dungeons and Lasers. So this, and to be honest, I was really expecting much bigger, especially when I saw the box, but I mean, it's still pretty cool. And it's a hanging tree, which is kind of funny. So it's a demonic ent. Like, it's like, this is something you would have seen if in the Lord of the Rings, if he was a really mad ent at the orcs. So that would have been cool to see hanging orcs, you know, that would have been kind of interesting. But if you take out the hanging parts or whatever, you could use this as an ent. Anyway, so what I did with this is I actually started off with a demonic yellow primer on it, and it was so goopy, the color, that it was really thick on there, but it was like messed up. But it was actually kind of perfect because I wanted a tree to have different looks to it. It ended up working out because the branches were a little bit off and all that stuff. And by the way, this was a really hard miniature to figure out how to build because the instructions kind of were upside down. You should have started at number 4 or 5 instead of number 1. Anyways, you'll have to take a look at that video to see what it was. But again, it was really fun to paint this guy. It was just tossing on a bunch of air paints here and there. You can actually see like it's pretty just blotched on, but he looks amazing. And then I used some water texture paint at the base here to make it like really shine and pop. And I didn't want to put too much emphasis on the base. I really wanted people to pay attention to the actual miniature on this one. All right, so that was a number 6. So let's move on to number 5. All right, so number 5, we're actually getting 2 miniatures this time. It was one of them rare times where I painted 2 miniatures at the same time because I like keep my videos pretty short, but it's still being ended up pretty short anyways. And what was fun was this is from Marvel United by Simon Games, and it was actually the 2 different Wolverines. It was Weapon X and Wolverine himself. And the point I was doing that was this, I wanted to actually be able to show you what it looked like to have 2 miniatures painted at the same time, and that it could be done pretty quickly. Even though I wasn't using at all the same paints except for the skin tone, I believe I used the same color on that. It was totally just different colors, not at all following any paint. Well, I mean, I was following the artwork and all that, but what I really like is that like this miniature here had so many muscle details, and this one has so many details in the actual outfit that using speed paints on this was like the perfect idea of painting a miniature and getting them done quickly. And especially if you have kids involved that are playing Marvel United and they want to help you paint, well, they can get into miniature painting because these are a nice scale as well. They're not your typically smaller versions. Like you saw like Spider-Man a while ago, it was pretty thin and small. The Spider-Man in Marvel United is much bigger, bulkier looking, so a little bit easier to paint. Plus, they have bases already done, which they did and also in the Marvel Zombies, but this was one of the rare things that Simon ever did was have bases already done on a miniature that you could paint instead of creating your own and all that. And it's just like, even on the metallic paint here on his helmet, it's got so many nooks and crannies. It does such a great job. And then just the yellow that I was able to use on this, and I think I put a wash on top of a speed paint anyways. I don't even know if this was speed paint or not. You know what? It's been a while since I've seen what it was, but I just loved the look. And when I look at the picture that pops up on the screen or on my camera or on all my other social medias, it's just something, I don't know, these ones I loved seeing them, especially together. I love seeing them together. I love seeing what they could be. I mean, imagine playing both of them in the game. It's like you have a multiverse of Wolverines playing. But again, this is, like I said, another good way to get into miniature painting. If you're not started, I find that the Marvel United, they're not superly overly detailed, and they're super simple to paint. I would recommend a white base on them if you can, unless unless you have a color primer that the miniature is full of. Like, let's say, I think Night Stalker is mostly blue. I think I might have used a blue primer on that guy. But anyways, these are miniatures that you would want to start with a kid or a new person starting painting, because they are simple. And because if you use speed paints on them, they're not necessarily all flat areas. They do have some details and some nooks and crannies that you'll see how speed paints work. And if you're working with Citadel paints, well, again, it will be a great way to start your miniature. Start off with a little bit of Corax White or even some Wraithbone. I would say Wraithbone and Corax White if you're going Citadel. And this is why, and I believe, actually, you know what? I might even be wrong, but I think there might actually be 2 primers on these guys. I'm not sure 100%. Or it might even be brain matter based. I really don't remember. It's been such a long time. Anyways, go take a look at that video. The link will be there. So let's move on to number 4. All right, so moving on to number 4. That's another video that I did recently, not too long ago. When these came out, I was actually like, wow, these are amazing miniatures when I saw in the pre-order. And I was really hoping that it was going to hit more on the channel, especially I was doing, at the time, I think it was, I don't remember what it was called, like Smash Chop painting. And I think this is the miniature. So this is Wicker Eddie from the Iron Maiden packs by Simon Games that can be used in almost all their games, including Zombicide Undead or Alive or the Black Plague, or even Invader, one of their older Zombicides. Even this one, I believe, is Cthulhu Death May Die, which is pretty cool that you can use this guy in there. And when I called the Smash Chop technique, this was Ninjon who mentioned it, where you start off with your dark base, and then you move your way up and you smash paint onto your miniature, which is pretty much what I did with this one. I started off with a black primer, and then using the airbrush, I really worked on the flames. Now, I recently saw another tutorial on YouTube about painting flames, and I'm going to try that on the Human Torch eventually, the regular version in Marvel Zombies. So keep an eye out for that. But we come back to Cinder Eddie, and I just find he actually looks, I know it's a little hard to see. Let's see if we can focus him a bit more. No, it's a little, anyways, so he just looks like a pile of fire. Like he looks like he just came out of the fire, and he looks like he's, you know, burning up. There's just, I just love the details that came out of this one. And he would have been higher up if I hadn't painted some other miniatures recently that I just am wowed by. And I mean, the Iron Maiden packs were not for everyone, I guess, because, you know, if you don't know Iron Maiden and all that, I didn't know, I never really listened to Iron Maiden and all that when I was a teenager, but I just loved the look of the miniatures, and I love the fact that they were available to be played in all the CMON games, like a whole bunch of them. And you know, and it was fun at one point to do a video of, this made me go out of my comfort zone and just painting speed paints or just going fast through a miniature. However, this guy didn't even take me that long to paint. It was actually pretty quickly. And all the Iron Maiden ones, that I was able to actually show a difference between Slapchop and Zenithal, and how I find that Zenithal is pretty much a better way to use speed paints with if you want to have a really light and dark shadow effect. But this guy was called Smash Chopping. Really enjoyed painting this guy. If you haven't seen that video, take a look. The link again will be popping up here. But I just found he was really fun to paint. So let's move on to number 3. All right, number 3, which could have probably been my number 1, but then there was a couple other miniatures that I look back on and anyways. But these ones were actually, again, a rare occasion where I painted 3 miniatures to show you different techniques. And this was the airbrushing versus speed painting versus acrylic paints over a metallic primer. And these were the Sentinels from Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game by CMON Games. And this is the speed paints over metallic one. This is the one I actually like the most out of the 3. Why? Is because, as you can see, the blue is, well, what number 1 is, it's not as shiny as the other 2. The other 2, the metallic paints, the air paints, and the acrylic paints almost look identical. And you're seeing too much of the light blue and all that. This one really takes the picture, I find, of what the actual Sentinels look like in the original comic books, the cartoons and all that. And it just has a slight metallic shine to it. And then having the chip marks on it all with silver, just regular silver paint, just makes it finish off the miniature look amazing. And this one was actually one of the shortest. Well, no, the air painting one was the shortest one. But this one was actually quite short as well, because you didn't have to, you know, I mean, you could just glob so much on your brush and then just slap it on, right? Because it's speed paint, and that's the point. But whenever you're looking at acrylic paint, so you got to be careful not to hit other areas. Well, I mean, this one too, but the other one you have to go back if you make a mistake and fix it up. This one, it was not so bad. It was easier to control the paint, I find, and get it where you wanted it to. Airbrushing, I mean, it went so fast, but you really have to make sure you get it on the right areas and not go over too much. If you did, you have to come back and touch it up and all that. So that's why this one came out at number 3 in total, but was actually the best one of those 3 miniatures in the pack. That was another long video, but it was fun to do. These guys are great. You can even use these in Marvel Crisis Protocol. I mean, I don't know if the base sizes are right, but I mean, to pay $60 for one compared to a whole box of these, like you get 3 of them, plus the 2 Xavier versions too, of zombie mode and regular mode, Professor X there. So anyways, if you're looking for a fun miniature to paint huge, the Sentinels from Marvel Zombies. Let's move on to number 2. All right, we're getting close to the top 1, and we're going to be here now with top 2, number 2. And this is one I recently painted, and it's not just one. It's a batch painting of about 40 of them. However, again, I'm still just have done the basic 4 that I showed you in my video. The other ones are coming along though, just to let you know. I'm just so stuck on getting other videos out and painting up individual miniatures that batch painting the other one just takes a side note. And again, another rare occasion, but this one I painted 4 different miniatures. Now it's going to be hard to show all 4 here. I'm going to put them in my hand here. And of course I'm going to drop one. So that's, you know, hey, it happens. Hey, it's you know, I won't even edit that out. That's the funny part. So here's the 4, and these are the troopers from Marvel Zombies. So I think this is the 3rd Marvel zombie to appear in this top 10, but just because the miniatures are amazing. Now the reason, I'm just going to show you one, guys. The reason why I really enjoy this is I did something off camera first to test. And what I did was actually prime these all in white and did an underbrush. Okay, so I actually went from underneath and put ionic blue. And this is where you're going to get a shadow effect. And then I took a speed paint and airbrushed that entire thing over the entire miniature. Except I tried to avoid the face because I really wanted to keep it light with the white. I mean, sometimes it hit it, but the speed paints actually, well, you can't see there, but the speed paints actually covered up the bluish tone that were sometimes in the face that hit by the ionic blue. And even the hair, I mean, I used different skin tones. And this is actually another thing I did, is I actually used different skin tones from the Army Painter to show you what their range can do. And some of them, again, work well, some of them don't. Put a little bit of flesh tone on them, and then really simplify it. But then what was long was doing the details of like the belts and the straps and the gloves and the things. And that's what's long in the batch painting process. But what really saved me time, and this just made me enjoy airbrushing so much more, which is something I might actually do more of, is that underbrushing with an airbrush under white, so a color that, you know, your miniature is going to be eventually, and do the air underneath airbrush, and then just come over with a speed paint on the entire thing of the base color that you want, and then just come back with acrylic paints and just touch up everything. It's just, I don't know, and just the look. I mean, look at the details. I mean, I know you can't see it here, but again, the video is going to pop up. You saw the picture at the beginning of this part of the top 10, and it's just, I don't know, they blew my mind, and I got so much positive feedback from those miniatures that it had to be really high up. Now, there's one miniature that's coming up that I wanted to give high praise to myself because it is probably the simplest miniature I've ever painted, but it came out the most beautiful looking miniature. But before we get to that, look at some honorable mentions. And the first one are the Caryatids Canophores from, again, Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings, or First Blood skirmish game by Parabellum Games. Now, again, I don't have that miniature to show you guys, but I'm just going to show you, talk to you quickly about these honorable mentions. So these could have made my top 10, but they ended up being pushed back a little bit just because other ones took over what I felt were my favorite miniatures. But these ones were great to paint because they were super cool. They look like stone statues that are broken with some ooze coming out of them. The next honorable mention is Tundor. He's a mercenary from Hate. I think he was speed painted a little bit with speed paint metallic, some speed paints here and there. I was given a slap chop of black, gray, and white, I believe. Again, I don't remember. Just a huge miniature that was fun to paint. Hate is a great board game that hasn't been seen very much around, but it is a great game. So if you get a chance to play it, take a look at it. Eventually this year, I would like to get through the clans and find a way to paint them all differently, that they look like different clans and not the same clan. Anyways, our next honorable mention is Rebecca from Black Rose Wars. And now, if I'm not mistaken, she's actually from the, is it a Sator box at the time? I don't remember. It was a Stretch Goals box. And the reason why I put her there above other ones in the Black Rose Wars universe is that I just liked the lighting, the way it hit. And what I did is I did an OSL zenithal highlight with her. And I was starting to do that, and I found it on the Black Rose Wars miniatures. It did a great effect. It looked like the light was coming right on her at a certain angle, and the speed paints really just amplified that shadow and light. Next, we have a very, what do you call it, controversial board game, Darkest Dungeon. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people love the company, some people hate the company for what happened. I was lucky enough to get this through a store, and then this is the Crusader. The Crusader is a known character in the video game, and is very simply painted, super quick to do. The reason why he's in my top 15, he's not in the top 10, and he's not a great miniature, but he was another one that I was trying to do a comic book style, but totally failed at it. And it ended up being just a Zenithal highlight version of it. And I was starting to learn on how to do the light and dark and all that. But it was just a simple paint job, and it was just fun to paint. And as Darkest Dungeon, there's still lots to paint in that box as well, and I'll get to that eventually. The final honorable mention here is actually a miniature. Well, he's not too many. It's Rotten Claw. It's from the Undead or Alive Dead West box. So a stretch goals box. It's an abomination, and what an abomination. And it was the first time, really, where I started to try and use that Yoo-hoo glue that people are using for slime and like pus and teeth and, you know, make it look like it's gory. And I added a little bit of blood texture to it, or blood paint, to make it look like the blood was gooping down from there in his mouth and all that. So it was a trial and error kind of miniature, and it was fun to do. And that's why he ended up being in some, just above the top 10. And, but I wanted to mention him. So anyways, those 5 miniatures, I loved painting them. They were all fun to do. All this sorts of weird techniques I tried over the past year. So let's move on to my number 1 miniature. So it would seem that I accidentally recorded something else instead of actually recording my video for the number 1 miniature. So in the meantime, what you can do is actually just rewatch a part of the miniature where I'm airbrushing it. So my number 1 for 2023 is the Wendigo from the Undead box, or the Dead West box, sorry, from Zombicide's Undead or Alive. I mean, yes, it's a super simplistic miniature, but because I had so much fun painting this and just tossing on whatever I thought would work for this miniature, and it ended up looking just amazing, like as if I was planning this all along, is what makes it that it's my number 1 miniature. And I know some of you it wasn't like super well viewed under some people loved it. I just really enjoyed painting this miniature. It was a lot of fun. It got me out of my comfort zone for painting. Did a whole, like you saw with the murder scene and the blood mixed in together. It just really made this miniature pop, and I'm telling you, if you see this on the table, I think if you were a hero from this game, you'd run away very quickly. So anyways, that's my number 1 miniature. Before we finish off here, what I want to do is, in my description, I have a link to my Discord channel. And we're going to do the first ever annual Easterling Miniatures Awards. So in December of 2024, so if you're watching this later, sorry, just for fun, I want you guys to go in my Discord channel. There will be an actual channel there that's going to be written the Miniatures Awards. And I want you to at least post as many as you want. You can post, but the ones you are most proud of painting that year, okay? So in 2024, whichever one you're most proud of painting. And I'm going to have some categories of most details, best base, best use of a paint. And I want you to describe what you've used in that miniature. So again, join my Discord channel. This is absolutely free, but there's not going to be any prizes per se. I might create a PDF file with my logo on it and best miniature of the year and all that. And I will send it to you guys via, in the Discord channel. You'll be able to print it out or do whatever you want. You can hang it on your wall. But it just makes the community come together. And for me to see that you're using my videos, and if you can actually use miniatures that I've painted on the channel to post in 2024, and if you even have quick little clips that you're able to post on the Discord channel too, of you painting it or following me painting it, that would be great. I'd love to see that. Anyways, a great big thank you again. I've reached my goal in 2023 of hitting 2,000 subscribers. I want to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. So please help me achieve that goal and make that happen to this channel and just blow it up, okay? Share it, like it, comment. Every single video you can, comment. Anyways, I want to wish you guys a happy new year, happy painting. May the paints be with you. Spend less time painting. Anything you want to say, join my Discord channel. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're new, and welcome to the easiest painting tutorials there are on the web, because I don't think anyone out there will ever teach you as simply as I do. Anyways, again, thank you. and we'll see you all in the next one.